The Arizona Technology Council SBIR Connections event. Today's title is Plugging into the Department of Energy's SBIR program. This is our June virtual SBIR Speaker Series event, and excited to have everyone here. And we'll be introducing you to our speakers here in a few minutes. But before we get started, I want to remind you all that the Tech Council puts on over 100 events a year in Phoenix and Tucson and online. And you can find the details about all of our events at aztechcouncil.org. But I want to mention a few upcoming events. On Thursday, July 7th, we have our annual Aerospace, Aviation, Defense, and Manufacturing Conference at venue 8600. That's from 1 to 5 with a social afterwards. On Tuesday, July 12th, we have another virtual tech speaker series, The Truth About Cyber Insurance. On Wednesday, July 12th, we have a virtual MarTech series, B2B website strategies for better conversations in 2022. I'm sorry, conversions, not conversations. And then we have our annual CEO retreat up in Sedona this year on August 1st and 2nd. And then in October, starting to really promote our Southern Arizona Tech and Business Expo on October 9th. Also want to mention that nominations are now open for the Governor's Celebration of Innovation. You can, of course, find the application forms on the Tech Council website, again, at aztechcouncil.org. And the gala event will be held at the Phoenix Convention Center on November 8th. So if everyone who's not already on mute, if you could place your audio on mute. If you have questions during the course of the presentations today, if you could put your questions in chat. If you want to ask your question, please use the raised hand feature, and someone will call on you and ask you to unmute and ask your question. I want to thank the Arizona Commerce Authority for their continuous partnership on this event today and many others throughout the year. And next, I'd like to introduce Kyle Holman, who is with the Arizona Commerce Authority, and he's going to take it from here. Kyle, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Kyle Holman. I am with the Arizona Commerce Authority. For those of you who don't know, the Arizona Commerce Authority is a recipient of the Small Business Administration's FAST grant. What that means is that we are a local resource for companies looking to access the SBIR program here in the state of Arizona. Through that FAST grant, we're able to put on events such as this through outreach, as well as providing technical and financial assistance to companies looking, once again, to apply and hopefully increase the number of successful applicants here in the state of Arizona who are receiving those SBIR awards. On that note, I would like to plug a couple links here in the chat. The first one is a link to the Arizona Commerce Authority's SBIR Resource Center, where you can get plugged into the various resources that the ACA is offering, including the FAST grant, which is a $3,000 grant to companies that are looking to access that SBIR funding. It'll help go to cover the cost of a grant writer or a consultant, or really anything that helps move a company towards a successful SBIR application. I would also like to plug one more link that takes you directly to our list of upcoming events. At the moment, like Steve said, we will be participating in the upcoming Aerospace, Aviation, and Defense Manufacturing Conference on July 7th. Also, and it's not on the website yet because a link has not yet been created, but in August, we will be having an event with BBC Consulting, which is a great consulting firm that does a lot of work with the SBIR program. We'll be doing a webinar workshop with them related to the Department of Defense SBIR program and how to access the SBIR program through the different agencies under the DOD umbrella, the Navy, Army, Air Force, etc. So that'll be a great event in August, and a link will go live shortly with registration for that as well. Shifting towards what we're here for today for, the DOE's SBIR program. I have two guests with me, Amanda Buchanan from UACI, as well as Manny Oliver from the Department of Energy. Amanda will be up first giving a presentation on UACI's program as a power connector through the Department of Energy. Amanda is a program manager with the University of Arizona Center for Innovation, or UACI. With more than 15 years of project management experience, Amanda manages UACI's relationships and contracts with the DOE and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. She has a passion for supporting those seeking to advance their technology, and she's here with us today to talk a little bit about that Power Connector program. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Amanda. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks, Kyle. I'll get started on sharing my screen, but thank you everybody for joining. I am excited to share a little bit with you about UACI and how we support SBIRs. So we are a full service incubator here in Southern Arizona. We are located out at the University of Arizona Tech Park, among some other sites and locations throughout Arizona. But we have
whoever can manage access to can also see all the documents.
We are supporting technology and science-based startups. As I shared, we're full service facilities and programs where we have wet labs, dry labs, office space, meeting event space, but we also have a very robust virtual program that has really taken off during the pandemic that we've continued. And that's really been really key and grown our relationships outside of Tucson, in particular our relationships with the Department of Energy and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And so for the last couple of years, we've been what the DOE calls a power connector. 1 in 15 organizations have been selected throughout the United States to help support startups and businesses looking to advance their technologies and innovations primarily in clean energy. And so there's also, beyond that power connector support, there's what we also call connectors. Connectors are anyone that has taken time and personnel to support competitors that are applying for funding through any of the American-made challenges, which if you'd like to learn a little bit more about what the American-made challenges are, you can locate that in the DOE's website, go to americanmadechallenges.com and see a little bit more about those challenges that they have. But we have primarily been supporting challenges based in solar, but there are many other challenges in water and geothermal. And so there's many opportunities for those that are seeking funding to apply there. Yes.
And I just wanted you to know, if you can't see it, that your PowerPoint is cut off on both sides. So you can only see the center part of it.
I cannot see that.
Yeah,
Kyle, Kyle, do you?
Yeah, yeah, it does look like it's partially cut off. We did test it to make sure that it was fully on the screen, and I guess after more people joined, the way the call automatically formats the share screen, it's now cut off. If you right now, Amanda, in the format you have it, we do see the whole screen. The text is just a little small at the moment.
Sure, I'm just going to reshare and see if that changes anything, but it doesn't look like it. Can you see, Kyle?
Yeah.
Is it still
a little bit better, but it's still slightly cut off.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay.
Okay.
Because you're talking through the slides anyway, so I think you're okay.
Let me I'll just kind of quickly go over the support that UACI has provided SBIR, particular the SBIR and STTR programs for, and we have in the last couple of years been able to focus primarily on release 2 of the SBIRs for DOE, but in that we have been able to really put together some materials that can be accessible to anyone in release 1 or release 2. But some of the topics we've covered are just how to prepare an LOI, finding the right topics, writing your proposal, evaluation criteria, legal process and data rights. But then we also put together some commercialization workshops for those that are are applying to prepare that commercialization strategy once you get your LOI returned. And the reason I share that is that we have recorded each of these sessions that we've done, and we have them up and available on our YouTube channel. So if you visit these, you'll have access, and these really just apply to any areas of the SBIR. You have the opportunity to go back and kind of watch some of the materials we put together in the past. It gives you a little bit of insight into what we offer at UACI and kind of our level of support. Our staff are focused in these videos and highlighted, so you'll get a chance to kind of see the expertise. And with that being said, we have a couple of team members at UACI that are very skilled in SBIRs. One is Sonia Vonhat, who is a founder and president of OpSpot. She is also a UACI subject matter expert, and she really has many years of experience in SBIRs and STTRs with founding her own companies and now working to support others in applying for funding.
Amanda?
Yes.
If you could take your presentation down, I'm going to have Daryl put it up. And
I have really just one more slide. If that is helpful, I could, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that changes it, but really I can just provide, our contacts, information for Casey and myself. We're both program managers at the University of Arizona Center of Innovation. And if you had like some information on how we can provide support, or just in general information on what kind of support we have upcoming, please reach out and we'd be happy to chat with you. So I'll kick it back over to you, Kyle. I'm sorry that was a little intermittent, but hopefully you got the information that was needed, and
appreciate it,
I will
Amanda.
stop sharing.
No worries. Would it be possible to have these slides sent out to the attendees as well?
Yes, most definitely. I will put these
perfect.
in a PDF and send them over.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda.
Does anyone in the chat have any questions for Amanda before we kick over to Manny? Give just a few seconds for that. Cool. Well, thank you, Amanda. I appreciate it. And if anyone else thinks of any questions going on, feel free to save those till the end of the presentation for our open Q&A. But on that note, I would like to now hand it over to Manny Oliver with the Department of Energy. Manny manages the DOE's SBIR STTR Programs Office and coordinates with the DOE's programs offices that participate in the SBIR and STTR programs. He is primarily responsible for improving both the operations of the program to be more efficient and effective, and for ensuring that the program outcomes address both the statutory purpose of the SBIR and STTR programs and the mission of the Department of Energy. He welcomes your feedback on experience with the programs and suggestions on how to improve their operation and outcomes. So without further ado, I'd like to kick it over to you, Manny. Thank you for being here with us today as well.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. And I just want to make sure everybody can see my presentation, or no, it's not sharing. To have dropped it. Okay.
I can see the full screen at the moment.
So okay,
Looks good.
having the same. Okay, great. All right. So thanks, Kyle, and glad we're not having any technical difficulties to start here. So, and again, here's just my contact information, phone number, email. So please reach out to me if we don't get your questions answered today. Also have some additional contact information at the end of my presentation. So I'm going to do three things, and the time I have, probably going to have too much information to present. But so I was asked to give a brief overview of the federal SBIR program. So nothing specific to DOE, just kind of a general overview of SBIR, because there may be some people here who are not familiar with these programs. Then I'll talk specifically about what DOE, what our mission areas are, what we fund, and then talk a little bit about the sort of how to apply and those kind of more pragmatic questions. So let me get started in terms of the general federal SBIR program. So the federal government spends about $100 billion a year in R&D, most of it going to universities and federal laboratories, some to business as well. Congress established the SBIR and STTR programs as a way to channel funding for competition just among small businesses. So you're not competing against these other organizations to get these funds. The goals of the program, as implied by their names, a large focuses on innovation, and they were created, primarily because small businesses, even though they may have innovative ideas, just don't have the funding. You don't have the profit stream, especially if you're a startup, to do research. And so this was the reason Congress created the program. So again, innovation driven. It is aligned with federal R&D needs. So instead of there being one national SBIR program to apply to, there are actually many SBIR programs associated with different agencies, because for each of these SBIR programs, you're really addressing kind of the mission needs of those agencies. I did want to point out that one of the important goals of the program is to include women and socially and economically disadvantaged persons in innovation. That's something we do take seriously and track. And then again, the Tech Transfer Program, STTR, is something that's focused on collaborative research between a small business and a university. There's important differences between these programs. We always talk about them together, but they are two different programs, two different pots of money. Sorry for the little bit wordy slide here, and I have a few of them today. But hopefully you can just use this as a resource. We'll send it out after the meeting. But the major differences are, as I mentioned, STTR, you have to collaborate with a nonprofit research institution, typically a university or federal lab. The principal investigator for an SBIR must be employed by the small business. For STTR, it can be, the PI can be from the small business or the research institution. And again, there's something called level of effort, how much work needs to be done by the small business, how much is, for example, done by a research institution. And you can see those percentages here for phase 1 and phase 2. And note that, you are, in all cases, able to sort of subcontract up to about 30% of the work to other parties as part of your award. Congress actually doesn't give money explicitly to these programs or appropriate money. It tells agencies to set aside a percentage of the extramural R&D they have every year for these programs. And so I just want to give you a snapshot that Congress has found the programs to be valuable and over time has increased the percentages that go to these two programs. And as I've shown here, the SBIR and STTR programs have a ratio of about 7-to-1 in the funding levels for these two programs. As I mentioned, there are 11 agencies that participate in these programs. Again, 5 of the agencies, Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, Department of Energy, National Science Foundation, and NASA, actually comprise about 97% of the total budget. They are the biggest research agencies in the federal government, and the participation, again, just tracks based on the research budget of these agencies. In total, there's about currently over $3.5 billion that goes into these programs annually, so there's quite a bit of money. For DOE, our program's about, these data from 2019, but we're over $300 million annually. So there's quite a bit of money available through these programs. In terms of eligibility, again, a little bit wordy slide, but you just need to be a for-profit, U.S.-owned small business, and small is based on the number of employees you have, and that would be 500 or fewer. Another important constraint is all the R&D, this is a domestic program, so all the R&D must be formed in the United States. It is a phased program. In some ways, because we are taking on a lot of technical risk, the phase program allows us, to fund things in phase 1 where a company might be a startup, may not have a track record, but allows agencies to take a chance on some new and innovative ideas with smaller amounts of money before we go into phase 2, and that's where the bulk of their R&D is typically done. And that's, the award amounts and the project durations kind of reflect that shift from a proof of concept to building prototypes, and we're developing a new process. The phase 3 is actually just means anything that doesn't include SBIR and STTR funding. So this may be other federal funds or private sector funding that that moves the project along toward commercialization. Just sort of an overall picture. If again you're new to SBIR and STTR, the federal government is allowing you to take on sort of innovative, high-risk, early-stage research, where the government is basically funding that either through grants or contracts, And again, the key word that's often used is this is non-dilutive. We're not taking any equity in your company. You don't have to pay back these grants or contracts. You're basically, doing research, on behalf of the government to bring these innovations either to agency benefit or to the private sector benefit. Also, there's no cost sharing. A lot of federal awards do require cost sharing. For phase 1 and phase 2 of SBIR and STTR, there's no cost sharing required. With regard to IP or patent rights, you do get to have worldwide patent rights for any inventions you make under these awards. The government does retain certain rights. They would generally only exercise those rights in very rare extreme circumstances. They are not there to compete with you or steal your technology. If there was some urgent government need where they need something produced fast, that they retain their royalty-free license to do that. My knowledge for DOE, we've never exercised this right since the programs were created. The other important thing to note is that when you are actually working on a federal grant, or typically for any, like a university doing a federal grant, they have to publish, submit a technical report on what was done with the R&D funds, and SBIR and STTR awardees will need to do that as well. The difference for SBIR and STTR is your report is actually going to be protected for 20 years. We understand that you are developing technology that you hope to commercialize, and that would certainly not be beneficial to have those reports published and available to your competitors. But again, all other federal R&D, those reports come in and are published typically right away. So that's, I think, for the first part of my presentation. I can just pause there briefly to see if there are any questions just about that overview piece of this. Oops, I guess every time I do that, I think
we have one question in the chat right now, Manny, from Scott Stewart.
Okay.
He asked, what is the general status of SBIR? He thought that it did not make it into the federal budget for next fiscal year.
So that's a very good question. So the way the SBIR programs run, they were not permanently authorized. So they're only authorized for usually several years at a time. So the current authorization runs out on September 30th of this year, the end of this fiscal year. The government works on a fiscal year that goes from October 1st to September 30th. So the end of the FY22 fiscal year, the authorization expires. So Congress is currently working on reauthorizing the programs. They're hoping to get that in the American Peace Act, which they hope to get out in July. There are discussions and concerns about the programs lapsing if they don't get it in legislation in time. So that is I will say, the possibility. I think Congress is working hard to avoid that. They're negotiating some changes in the programs as part of the reauthorization that are going through. So we hope there is no lapse and it's reauthorized. I would just say for FY 2023, the way the government works is funding is not appropriated sort of in advance. I don't want to get too much off track here in details, but our appropriations, for example, for FY 2022 were only finalized in March. Even though the fiscal year started October 1st, Congress didn't actually pass the full year appropriations until March of this year. So pretty typical for Congress not to, most years we don't get appropriations finalized until well into the fiscal year. So we probably expect that to happen again next year as well. But that doesn't really prevent us from running the programs. This lapse in authorization, though, is a serious concern. And certainly if anything like this happens, all the agencies will be sending out notifications about that. Certainly when reauthorization is passed, hopefully in advance of September 30th, we will send a note out about that too, in case people were worried about that. All right, so I will just move along in interest of time. So now I'm just going to talk a little more about what DOE funds, and just at a high level, this is the mission of the Department of Energy stated here, and three of the important goals. I do want to point out that, and this goes for other agencies as well, don't be sort of lulled into just looking at the name of the agency, which is usually very short, and think that you know everything that they do. We usually have very diverse activities that we undertake, and we can use a lot of different technologies in application of serving our mission. So even though we aren't, our mission doesn't say manufacturing, we do have a lot of In fact, we have an advanced manufacturing office from the department, so we do work on certain things that don't pop up in the name of the agency. So don't stop that from looking at us or other agencies. So the three main areas we work in, of course, are energy technologies. I'll talk about those. We have a very large Office of Science, almost as big as National Science Foundation. And I'll talk about, and those areas are highlighted in blue on the right. But we also work in nuclear security, and we have a couple programs that participate in SBIR in that area as well. So let me get started on that. Cybersecurity, I think you're familiar with. And again, so this is protecting the grid, and you've seen some things in the news about that. So this is a very important area. Unfortunately, not a very large budget area, and something that we hope to see increase in the future. Our Office of Electricity, again, this is really, you can think of the grid, or as it evolves into the smart grid, also considers microgrids that kind of operate independently off the grid. And a very big and important area as renewables come on the grid is how do we store energy on the grid. I would point out I also included links to the web pages for each of these offices. So the links here are websites. You can learn more about these programs. This is one of our biggest offices, the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, and this is usually what most people think about when they think of the Department of Energy. You know, renewable, sustainable vehicles and buildings and so on. And again, our advanced manufacturing office is here, mostly focused on making manufacturing processes more energy efficient or cleaner and greener. We do have a large Office of Fossil Energy, and again here, again, a lot of the focus is the name has actually changed. It used to be Office of Fossil Energy, now it's Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management. A good part of the focus is since fossil fuels will continue to be a large part of our energy generation, even though we're deploying renewables as fast as possible, is trying to figure out how we mitigate and the impacts of the CO2 that is being released. So we do have topics related to carbon capture, utilizing it for other things, as well as storing the carbon. We have an Office of Nuclear Energy. Again, most of the focus is on sustaining the current nuclear fleet that's out there. Many of you are aware new nuclear power plants have been built in decades. There are some new proposals on the table, and hope to see some small modular reactors be deployed in the coming years. But most of the focus, again, is on the existing plants and the nuclear waste that they generate. And I'm going to shift into our Office of Science. As I mentioned before, we have 6 offices here. We do have a advanced scientific computing research. Most of the largest supercomputers in the country are situated at Department of Energy National Labs. They support a lot of the research we do, including a lot of the research on, say, particle physics and other things we'll talk about in a minute. So we do fund state-of-the-art computing, but now it moved on from exascale to petascale computing. From its networking, was moving very large amounts of data around, as well as AI and quantum computing. Basic energy sciences. This office operates a lot of the most advanced facilities to study materials, through X-ray, electron, and neutron-based instruments, and also funds research into new materials. Again, mostly related to energy systems. We do have actually, fund environmental and biological research. The environmental is related to, looking at some of the impacts of climate change, but also, doing subsurface work and relating to understanding, what's underground as it relates to, geothermal and other resources. And also, the biology is focused on bioenergy, but much more at the basic. This office at the basic science stage and understanding how microbes and structural biology can play an important role in bioenergy. We have an Office of Fusion Energy Sciences in the Office of Science. Again, most of the focus is on, again, as they say, bringing a sun to the earth and, using that to generate energy. So most of the work is on fusion reactors, although we also fund work on low temperature plasma technologies. Again, that can be used in a variety of things, such as semiconductor manufacturing, helping to purify water, and other applications. We have an Office of High Energy Physics and also Nuclear Physics. These are the folks who smash together particles at very high speeds and understand the nature of matter. most of the work that we fund here is related to, develop advanced accelerators, detectors associated with building and maintaining these facilities. I mentioned we work in the nuclear area as well, so we have an Office of Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation, do work here in trying to prevent illicit transport of nuclear materials, so a lot of working on radiation detection and so on, and building instruments that might be used on ports or terminals and things like that, as well as other handheld devices. And then finally, our Office of Environmental Management is tasked with cleaning up a lot of the sites that had been used in the early years of developing nuclear weapons and nuclear energy. And again, as I mentioned, the websites are there. If you're going to apply for funding from a program office, it's useful to understand what they do, and their websites will often talk about what they funded recently. You can see, get an idea, good idea to bring yourself up to speed on things they've done, workshops they've held, if you're going to apply to an agency for funding. So now I'll come to the sort of final third of my presentation. Again, I'm still going kind of fast here. I'll just stop again for questions on anything related to the Department of Energy mission and kind of things we fund.
We have one question in the chat, Manny, just asking if your slide deck is also going to be sent out or if it's a private deck.
Yes, it will. Yeah, I'll send that to you and Daryl after the meeting, and you guys can send that out.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Manny.
Okay. All right, so I'll move on to the last part. This is the more practical part about applying and when our solicitations are issued and so on. So first, in terms of how we operate the program, I already discussed the fact that we have many DOE program offices, these research offices that I just addressed. And so the programs are run collaboratively with those offices. They actually will be the ones developing the research topics, identifying reviewers, recommending which projects receive awards, and overseeing those projects once they're underway. Our office, again, puts out the solicitations that will include many different program offices. We'll actually administer that review and selection process, comply with the legislation, and we also do outreach such as this to get out to applicants. Third office you'll be aware of is that if you do receive an award, as our Chicago office will actually be the one issuing the awards to you. So you'll be, and so I just mentioned this so that you'll have three primary contacts: a technical program manager, a grant specialist out of our Chicago office if you receive an award, and then our office for any other sort of administrative questions about the SBIR and STTR programs. You can always start with us, and we'll direct you if you came to the wrong place. A lot of small businesses, I know, when dealing with the government, are always wondering, like, well, how much time do things take if I submit an application, and when is my award actually going to start, and things like that. So here's a timeline for our phase 1 and phase 2 awards. You can see they're very similar, so I'll just talk about the phase 1, and I'll give a little more detail about these. Any questions? Sorry. Yeah, so the timeline here, the 0 point is when you submit an application, and you can see about 3 months before you submit an application, we would issue our topics. We do want people to focus on finding a topic first before they worry about how to apply. The funding opportunity announcement, or FOA, comes out about 2 months before, and that really is sort of the rules. How do you apply, what your application needs to contain, how much money is going to be available, things like that. So that's contained in the solicitation. Then moving further on, you do have a letter of intent requirement. So if you can submit an application, we need to hear from you that you're planning to do that. That allows us to find reviewers and things like that. When you submit an application, that'll start our review and selection process. That'll take just under 3 months before you're notified that you receive an award. And then about 6 weeks after that, you'll work with our Chicago office. This negotiation, you're not doing kind of hardball negotiation. You're submitting a budget. Our office will, Chicago office will review that, see if there's any issues in your overhead rates, things like that, and then, finalize your award. You will get mostly of the time, 99% or higher of what you asked for. So in terms of the budget you submitted, and then your budget period would start and your award would commence. So this would be, approximately about 4.5 months after you submit your application. You would have money and be ready to go for your award. So I just want to present that timeline, since people are usually very concerned about, both the time to submit an application and the time to actually get your award. So we issue 2 phase 1 funding opportunity announcements each year, and they're split up by program office. And so this is the current split on those program offices. We covered all those very briefly. And again, a lot of you, I think, as Amanda referred to, those of you working in clean energy will primarily be focused in release 2. Here's the schedule. The schedule is up on our website for FY 2023, and the 2024 schedule, in fact, will be posted, I believe, tomorrow. So all the dates associated with this, if you have any questions, just go to our website. We try to be very transparent about when things happen, so you can plan around those. Before I talk about applying, I just want to mention that we have plenty of resources. First one is our telephone number. We have a support staff that really helps applicants. And if you call during, again, they are on the East Coast, so everything here is Eastern time. But if you call during those hours, somebody should pick up the phone and be able to answer your question. So I think we definitely get very good kudos, as a federal agency for having people that you can talk to, especially when you get a little antsy near the application deadline and have an urgent question. So we do have that. We also have email. We have online learning resources, including short video tutorials. For those who prefer the old-fashioned written guide, we have that as well. But most importantly, we have something called the Phase 0 Application Assistance Program. So that's a contractor. Currently, the contractor is a company called Dawnbreaker. Here's a link. And it's no cost to you. Basically, we're providing up to $5,000 to the contractor to assist you. Most of their assistance looks at, everything from preparing a letter of intent to assisting with your application. Now, they do not have grant writers that write your application. They will review the application and provide feedback. They will help you prepare a federal budget, provide funding for you to travel to, maybe if you want to collaborate with the DOE lab. And, a range of resources you can find on the page, and it's free. If you're a first-time applicant, no charge to you. You do have to contact them and apply to get that assistance, though. Again, all these links will be in the presentation that we circulate. Our topics, we do compare, agencies have different levels of specificity in their topics. Some, like National Science Foundation, are fairly open. They will tell you can submit any idea. We are a mission agency, so our topics are going to be aligned with our mission areas. So you do need to read through those and make sure you find a topic that's aligned with what you are doing. As I mentioned, these are issued about a month before we issue the funding opportunity announcement. And you can talk to our program managers. Things you should discuss is, does this fit with the topic you have here or the subtopic? Program managers aren't allowed to ask questions like, would you fund this? Is this a good idea? We are not ever going to evaluate your idea until you submit your application. So always keep that in mind. It's a general rule in the agencies. You have to submit a document. Some people will have we have a letter of intent we'll look at and provide feedback on, which we'll talk about. But unless you submit something that's part of the solicitation process, we just won't informally chat about that. That's generally not permitted. But you can talk about the topic scope. Is it a fit with what you're looking for? And we usually have a webinar after we issue our topics about a week later, so you can go in and ask the program managers, get some clarification on anything about the topic. If you want to see some of the past topic webinars, you can look at those online. Again, here's an example topic. This is from a few years ago. Again, showing how specific they can be. This again is related to our basic energy sciences and looking at the synchrotron and new new technology they need to improve those. So the topic and subtopic are important up above. They tell you how much your phase 1 award is, how much the phase 2 award is, whether they're accepting SBIR and STTR applications. Most of our applications accept SBIR, but some do not accept STTR. So you should be aware of that. The topic header just sort of briefly describes the technology area, and the subtopic will get into a little more detail about that. This is the person you would contact if you have questions. Their email address is there to reach out to them. I would also point, we have this other subtopic at the end of most of ours. So if you fit in kind of the topic area but are not looking at this specific technology gives you an opportunity to, propose something that's a little more general. Our topics often do have references. You might previous workshops or other activities that have taken place that would help you, be useful typically in preparing your application. Again, the funding opportunity announcement is the document that, again, contains what we consider the rules of the competition, all the information here, who's eligible, how the awards are going to be made, how we're going to review your applications, and some information about if you're awarded. Again, during this time, you can still communicate with the DOE program managers about the topics. You can communicate with our office about any questions you have about the application itself and anything of that nature. So again, please reach out to us with questions. Don't feel like you have to do this on your own. The first document you will prepare is a letter of intent for us. This is pretty short. It's really just letting us know who is applying, and you're going to provide a brief abstract, 500 words, typically a page. It's going to be non-proprietary. And we use this for two things. We will start finding your reviewers. As I mentioned, we only have less than 3 months to review your application. So we need to see an abstract so we can find reviewers before you submit the application. The other purpose it serves, oops, sorry, scroll there. The other purpose it serves is we will give you feedback. So you'll submit this one-pager, and if it looks like the program manager will review it, and if what you're proposing is not a fit for the topic, we will let you know that. You do have a choice of revising it so it does fit with the topic. So it's not a rejection of any kind, but it provides you with some additional feedback on that. I will point out currently we're only providing those feedback to people who do not appear to be responsive. If you don't get the feedback, please go ahead and submit an application. In terms of what you're submitting in an application, the most important thing will be the project narrative or technical proposal. We actually place page and word limits because people do get carried away with this, and these are a maximum. You don't have to write it to the maximum. We fund awards where they submit, fewer pages and fewer words. That's fine. Most people feel compelled to put every detail in. We understand that, but just, please stay within these limits. You'll submit a budget justification, describe your key personnel, and the other important thing is you'll provide a commercialization plan. There are page limits on this as well. Phase 1 is typically only 4 pages. We don't want you to get carried away there. Phase 2 is actually going to be up to 15 pages. That is a little more rigorous. Other agencies, vary in terms of how much emphasis they place in the process. I would say for DOE, for phase 1, we're mostly interested in the innovation. We believe during phase 1 award, you can devote more time to the commercialization plan to bring yourself up to speed and make sure you have a compelling phase 2 commercialization plan. We do provide commercialization assistance through a contractor for phase 1, and you can also get your own vendor, and you'll have to find your own vendor for phase 2. Remember, when we fund these awards, they are for research and development. If you're going out and talking to customers about their, we're talking to potential manufacturing partners or investors. In a sense, you're supposed to do that on your own dime. Now, we can provide commercialization assistance. Unfortunately, the commercialization assistance is for a vendor to help you. You can't actually use this money to directly fund, say your travel or to go visit with, supply chain folks and things like that. So just keep that in mind. We do have both SBIR and STTR programs. As I mentioned, some of our programs are small. They don't actually participate in the STTR program. For SBIR, you can still have a research partner, a research institution as a partner. And many of our SBIRs do that, but it's not required. And you can actually, if you meet the requirements for both, you can actually submit a application to both programs with one application. It's a little bit tight. You can see for an SBIR phase 1, a small business must do 2/3 of the work. And for an STTR phase 1, the research institution must do 30%. So it doesn't leave much wiggle room there for the other 3%. We do have, we go through external peer review for our agency. So typically at least 3 technical people, those probably most likely folks at universities or DOE national labs will be primary pool for the review. They'll be looking at the 3 criteria right here. which are equally weighted. And the most important thing I would mention is that we are basically funding limited. So we actually have many more applications that we can fund every year. So please be aware of that. We don't look at applications and all the good ones get funded. And it's really that we're going to rank all the good ones, and only the top ranked of those good ones will actually receive funding. The data on that here, this is for our 2021 phase one. Again, you can see the scale that we're working at, over 2,000 applications. This is the breakdown here. 21% of them received awards. We have another 24% that were sufficiently good to receive funding, but again, we have limited funding, and so another 24% were not awarded. Another 48% based on the review process were not recommended for funding, and then we had a percentage here declined without review. And again, some of that is just not meeting certain requirements in terms of they're missing key parts of their application, or when reviewed, they didn't really fully address and were not responsive to the topics we had put out. So, and just a final note about commercialization, we are not doing the market research and the business planning in advance of the topics going out. DOE program managers are aware of, like I always say, key technology roadblocks that we're looking for you to solve. But the commercialization responsibility is really on the small business. So you might see a technology problem you can solve, but we're also looking for you to come with the ability to bring that and create a sustainable business model for your company. So I will stop there. There's the end of the presentation just has some examples of companies we funded and the areas they've worked in. So you can just look through that afterwards. I'll just conclude with our final contact information, phone number, email, website, all the rest, how you join our mailing list, all that. So I'll stop there, see if there are any questions here at the end. Maybe I'll drop out of the slide notes since I can't see.
Cool. Well, thank you, Manny. I will give people some time to put their own questions in the chat. Question for you regarding the Phase 0 Assistance Program. I saw that you said it was for first-time applicants only. Does that mean if someone applies to the program without using the Phase 0 Assistance but is unsuccessful, they are not eligible for Phase 0 for their second time?
That's correct. So use it the first time.
Use it or lose it. Even if you're not successful, you won't be able to use it the second time. So there you go.
Right.
I appreciate it. Other than that, as far as the SBIR versus STTR programs go, what are some challenges you've seen around the STTR program? I've heard from other agencies that typically the amount of people feel more comfortable applying to SBIRs than STTRs for some of the other topics. Have you seen anything like that with the DOE as far as the difference between how companies treat SBIRs versus TTRs?
Well, some agencies actually treat them differently. So, like in defense, they'll have there are actually separate programs like SBIR and STTR run by different groups of people. And so they will treat them a little differently, and they may treat STTR as being a longer term opportunity with a little less focus on near-term commercialization. For DOE, we pretty much treat them independently. And in fact, we would, some of our SBIRs have 30% research institution involvement and could be, as classified as STTR. So we don't really distinguish between the two. We have to because they are separate, funding programs. But we treat them essentially the same because we view the involvement by research institutions kind of as a continuum. Some people may just have a professor as a consultant. Some others will have, the research institution doing a significant amount of the work, and pretty much a continuum when we've looked at this in the past. So we view the STTR as just kind of arbitrarily drawing a line for those who have significant research institution involvement. But otherwise, we don't see really any challenges. We get plenty of applications to either program and a significant amount who apply to both. We probably have as many apply to both as who apply to STTR. So that usually hasn't been kind of an issue for us.
Appreciate it. On that topic, a question from Mark Weathers here in the chat. Is it possible to do an SBIR with the university, or if you work with a university, do you have to do an STTR?
Oh yeah, no, it's, you know, as I mentioned, you are free. You know, if we look at the SBIR requirements, the small business needs to do 2/3 of the work in phase 1 and 50% in phase 2. The rest of it, you're free to subcontract to whoever you want. You can subcontract to a university. You can collaborate with a large business. You know, it's not restricted to only having other small businesses as your partners. So that other percentage, you do have quite a bit of freedom on how you would like to collaborate.
Thank you, Manny. As far as the application process goes, what do you see, or what do reviewers see when they're reviewing the project narrative portion of the application? What sort of things are sometimes left out or missing from the project narrative that you would like to highlight as important to include?
You know where the biggest distinction between a project sort of being in the recommended funding or not recommended for funding, you know, is going to really be on the first criteria, probably. You know, is this really innovative? And so that's really, you know, you're going to want to really convince people, one, you understand what the state of the art is. So if you have a new idea, you know, to make sure it is novel, you understand what industry is doing today, why this is an advance over the state of the art. And particularly for, you know, some of the programs, what are the metrics you're using to distinguish like why this is better? It is, you know, what is the cost reduction? What is the performance advantage? Is it, you know, 30% more efficient or whatever? You know, the key metrics you're using to describe how significant the advance is. You're going to want to focus on that. You know, the second review criteria, I would say, you know, is the team. And you're going to want to put together a compelling team. I would say most of our applicants do this. You know, we may get some startups who think they need to do everything themselves. The phase 1 money isn't a lot, right? So it may not appear that you have a lot of money to, you know, subcontract and work with a lot of people. But again, you know, everyone knows that the phase 1s are small, and so they know their involvement may be very minimal in phase 1, but they can really may make the difference in whether the reviewer believes you have the right expertise involved. And so you may actually just want to bring a university in just to do a very small work, and they may just be consulting with you or just doing a little bit of analysis in phase 1, realizing the budget is small. But most people get involved in phase 1 as you are to get to phase 2. Nobody wants a phase 1 just to get a phase 1. So you can use that, you know, getting other people interested in the phase 1, even though you think it's a small amount of money, because like you, they're interested in the larger phase 2 award. So keep that in mind. And the third criteria is impact. And so this does get, you know, to the idea if you're successful, as I mentioned, and, you know, there'll be a lot more emphasis on that in phase 2 and detailing what the impact would be. But even in phase 1, you should have some idea of how this is going to get to market and what impact it would have. Now, it's fine in the impact to discuss public benefits as well. You know, we do have a lot of people focusing on, you know, sales and investment and those kind of follow-on dollars, which, you know, people want. Don't get me wrong, people want to see that. But you know, a lot of times we're funding things because it will enable something else. You know, enables, you know, reduction of CO2 or things like that. So don't, you know, dismiss the public benefits as well when you're talking about that.
No, appreciate it. Thank you for that perspective. Kind of similar to the issues seen with a project narrative. I know there's kind of this tension for some people where they feel that they might have a really strong academic background, but they don't have a business background, or vice versa. They think that they have a really good idea on the business side, but they're not sure how to go about the research and development side on the academic side. So what is typically overlooked by applicants when drafting the commercialization plan that you would like to highlight as important?
Well, so the thing I would emphasize, the phase 1 commercialization plan we're putting in really just to make you start thinking about that. You know, ask you the question: do you know who your customers are? Do you know who your competitors are? Are you planning to file, you know, patents in this area or trade secrets? And you know, just asking you those very basic questions. We don't expect you to have a really solid commercialization plan in phase 1. If you are coming up with a new idea, and you know, you just have a technical innovation and you don't have a solid commercialization plan yet, again, we will postpone that to phase 2. So as I mentioned, in phase 2, we have a business development person just review your commercialization plan. Whereas in phase 1, it's part of your phase 1 application, but really the technical reviewer is going to be looking at that, not a business development person. So we're not going to, you know, beat you up in phase 1 about the fact you don't have a strong commercialization plan. What you should be focusing on in your application, though, are the activities that, you know, that you may undertake as part of trying to remedy the information you don't have. So one of the things I didn't discuss today in this time. So for example, we have an Energy I-Core training program that's available for phase 1 awardees. And so if you haven't done that type of customer discovery in the past, you can take this, and it's again, no cost to you. You know, you would take that program during, you know, our phase 1 to kind of get into that. You know, there are plenty of Energy I-Core training programs around the country, you know, and many people find it beneficial to go through that. If you have an NSF, you know, research grant, you can apply for a supplement to that grant to go through Energy I-Core training. So if you happen to be in academia, you have access to that. I think NSF is trying to broaden the I-Core program to include other people who aren't in academia, but I'm not sure what the status of that is. But yeah, we do limit participation to phase 1 awardees. You know, had some discussion about how do we get that out there before you apply for phase 1. But again, that's a little more challenging to run in that fashion for us. So we currently have it for phase 1 awardees. So do focus in your phase 1 application, you know, things you're, you know, admit your deficiencies and the things you're planning to do to, you know, remedy those things. Take advantage of the resources, take advantage of our phase 1 technical and business assistance contractor, or have your own, you know, identify your consultant. And as, you know, as Amanda mentioned, there are local resources like at ASU and UA on helping you, you know, consult with you to, you know, look at your plans and you know, they're probably not going to be able to go out and do all your customer research and all that for you, but they can at least advise you on things that you're, you know, big gaps that you're missing in even a basic commercialization plan.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your answers and I appreciate your presentation, and I appreciate you being here with us today, Manny. We are at the top of the hour. So if there are no questions in the chat, Carla, I think I'm supposed to toss it back to you now.
That's correct. And if my camera would work, it'd be great.
Sorry, what was that, Manny?
Yeah, just one final comment. I just want to point out, folks, that with the federal government and remote work and things like that, I am actually in Arizona. So I'm in the same time zone as hopefully everyone here. So if you have any questions, just reach out to me. Again, my contact information was at the, you know, on the slides will go out. So I will stop there.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Manny.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers for sharing their subject matter expertise this morning. And thank you to everyone who attended today's SBIR speaker series. And of course, without further ado, thank you to Kyle and the Arizona Commerce Authority for the continued partnership and continuous support. We look forward to seeing you all in person at the AADM, Aerospace Aviation Defense Manufacturing Conference on July 7th. We look forward to seeing you all in person. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.